Okay, can everybody hear me well?
Yes.
Okay, thanks. All right, let's start. All right, so this is chapter 4. I think we should spend maybe 2 lectures on this one. Then, yeah, did anybody had difficulty with the exercises? Did anybody try the exercises? Good. Oh, I haven't. So was it a yes for try, for difficulty, or for hello? Can you hear me? Anyway, so there are no exercise sessions in this class, but I really think it's useful for you to at least get a good idea of how things are to be solved, because they are not always so easy. So yeah, maybe at the end of this class or the next, I'm going to go back to the chapter 3 exercises just to yes, we are going in presence next week. For better or for worse, I hope for the best. All right, so we've seen supply, we've seen demand. So now this chapter is about putting the two together and seeing how normally in normal markets, everything is efficient. Everybody is happy and lives fulfilled and efficient life. But in real life, maybe our markets are imperfect, and there are reasons why we need to address market inefficiencies, market failures. All right, so yeah. So about market efficiency, so 2 questions that we should address: what quantity of some good ought to be produced? So I'm not saying anything in particular, just of some good. And what quantity is produced? So that's a positive question. So notion of efficiency here. Even I would say that one quantity ought to be produced is yeah, there's a efficiency in this question, but there's also efficiency is just a matter of producing it in the best way possible. So, and this applies to environment economics. So if you are to reduce so a quantity produced could be a reduction in GHG, for instance, in greenhouse gases. And once you decide that you do reduce it, so that's the quantity, you may decide that you want to reduce certain quantity, but there's also how do you reduce it? There are ways that are better than others, as we're going to see. Yeah, so economic efficiency is broadly said when marginal benefits of consumer equal marginal cost of production. So this is what you've learned in macroeconomics. Hopefully you remember a bit of your class. So why do we think this is efficiency? Well, because if yeah, so at this point, the last unit produces the exact same gain for the consumer who buys it as it cost for the firm who needed to produce it. If you produced fewer units, then some gains could potentially be had on a market that are not realized. If you produce too much, then it means that the marginal benefit will be lower than the marginal cost. Yeah, and also, so this is what we learned, of course, but then there's also this additional notion that we're going to introduce here is when all market and non-market values are incorporated in the marginal benefits and marginal costs of production. Why is that the case? Well, because this is going to go well regardless of whether there's government intervention or not, as long as there's perfect competition, perfect information, and all the rest. But if there are external impacts on other market actors, other firms, other consumers, then this is not going to be enough. What we have to do is account for everything that's going on in the economy so that people take the best decisions. So a very easy example is if I produce pollution by buying a car, then the size of the car I'm buying should be bought first of all, of course, with respect to my tastes in big cars, but second of all, to also I should be mindful of the fact that if I buy a bigger car, it pollutes more. And if I'm selfish and I don't take this into account, then we cannot say that markets are efficient. Yeah. So this is what happens in private markets. So this is this point here. So our marginal willingness to pay, MWTP, is equal to marginal cost, and the marginal cost is, you may remember, the aggregate supply. Why is it the case? Well, because if the price goes up, then it means that I can afford to pay more to produce the less units. So there's a one-to-one correspondence between the aggregate supply and the marginal cost curve. And of course, this is marginal willingness to pay. So it's aggregate demand, as we've seen last class. Notion of Pareto optimality. So probably most of you have not heard of that. So what is Pareto optimality? Here's a very good definition of it. So an allocation is Pareto optimal if there's no way to make someone better off without making someone else worse off. So economists really like to, so this, it's Vilfredo Pareto invented this. Economists really like this. Why? Because it means that we don't have to make any hard judgment. We don't have to pit the happiness of person A against the happiness of person B and say that, yeah, the world would be better if, say, Bill Gates had less money and the poor person in the street had more. We may say this is the case, but if we just apply this principle right here, then this is philosophically impossible to go against it. Who would say that if I get to a situation in which everybody is at least as happy, and then there's one extra person who is a bit more happy, how couldn't that be better? So this is it's saying it's a very fundamental notion. Yeah, so it doesn't distinguish among people. So no notion of redistribution, no equity or fairness. So this means that this is what we're going to, so I'm going to put stars around it. I'm not saying it's a good thing that we realize on this criterion. What I'm saying is by force of things, that's what we're going to use. Notion of fairness is more difficult and more philosophical. So this is the thing we want. We want a situation that's efficient because that's also a situation that is Pareto efficient. So economic efficiency brings Pareto efficiency. All right. So we're going to mostly use markets in our discussions. Why? Because most countries use markets. So that's what economists study a lot. It doesn't mean that it's the only way to administer, to manage the economy and to decide what level of pollution is better or worse. As we're going to see, there are things such as government mandates, by which you just dictate that every car is going to use this amount of fuel, or we're just going to buy fuel with lead inside it. So that's a mandate. It does not rely on any market mechanism, but so that's a very crude way of doing things. It may be very efficient though, but or not efficient, but I mean, it's at least you're sure you get to your objective. But in most cases, we're going to use markets in this class, and all of the mechanisms that we are going to like a lot, like taxes, subsidies, even tradable permits. Yeah, even so we're going to introduce later the cost theorem to allow people to negotiate. All of this relies on markets, relies on people negotiating, as in it is a more decentralized approach to it. And in all these cases, then we want, so the price, so the price where the quantity demanded is quantity supply is the competitive market equilibrium. And then we're going to, of course, change this competitive equilibrium. All right, so but now let's just say what the competitive equilibrium is before we say what we have to do to change it. So this is a small example that I think we're going to use it quite a bunch. It might be the same example as before. So this should be just something that you should be all familiar with. A linear demand function. I'm going to write it PD of Q. So as I said, equals here 100 minus 2Q. And I have a supply curve, PS of Q, which is also the marginal cost as function of Q. This is all aggregate, of course, at the market level. And this is equal to Q2. So how do I find the market equilibrium? So here, since both are a function of Q, then what I can do is simply put PD is equal to PS, because I know that that's what's required for the market to be in equilibrium. And I solve it this way. So I get 100 minus 2Q equals Q over 2. And yeah, here I get 5. So that gives me, so yeah, 5 halves. So that's Q equals 40. So usually, so this is, I tell you, so yeah. We denote market equilibrium. Star. So this may change. I think maybe the book has a different notation, but yeah. So it's usually is the case that you say when we are at equilibrium that there's a star, so you're going to use this. But obviously, then when we intervene in the market, when we introduce something like a tax or quota or something else, then we're going to have some other notation that denotes the situation in the market. Yeah, and once I have found Q, then how do I find market price? Well, I just insert back Q either in the demand or the supply. And so if I insert it in the supply, I get Q over 2, so 40 over 2 equals 20. All right, no questions about this. So this shouldn't be too difficult. Oh yeah, I didn't see. Yes, so Mathieu, I agree with you. I think it's for the better. just to see in your eyes whether you're completely confused or whether you kind of see what's going on, because otherwise I'm talking to my computer. I have the life of a YouTuber, which is kind of a sad one. You have hundreds of or thousands of followers, but you never really see them. So having a class, in-person class is nice.
Well, so
right.
how many students are we supposed to be in this class? Because technically we're 17 participants, or without you, then 16.
Yeah,
This doesn't make any sense.
I don't know. I mean, I think it looks like last time. It's not a big class.
Okay.
Let me just look at how many people are registered. Oh, GI. Sorry, I'm doing as quickly as I can. Participants. Okay, so we are 35. All right, so I don't know what they're doing. Perhaps what they're doing is saying, oh yeah, the class is good as it is if I just watch it later. I think people of your age, you watch things, you don't mind watching things at your own time. But yeah, if it's in person, it is not going to be recorded. So yeah, better. In my time, what we had to do was steal someone's notes or ask them to copy it, but that was really not that good. Oh yeah, by the way, so this is what we get. So I hope you're able to draw these things, because I pretty sure you're going to have to draw this at the exam in some way or another. So I want you to be able to do it. So yeah, this is. And by the way, if your drawing is very good, so here I made something that's perfectly straight and everything, then you can just eyeball the solution. If you just draw both curves well, then you don't even have to solve for the equilibrium. You can just look at it and, oh, this is exactly 40, this is exactly 20. And by the way, I'm going to, normally I try to give you nice numbers so that you don't get like many different decimal places. All right, so notion of surplus, this also should be somehow something that you already know. So the total willingness to pay is the area below the demand curve. But this is, of course, going to be for a specific quantity. So here it's this trapezoid over here. So why? Because I was willing to pay 100 for the first unit, then a bit less, and a bit less, and a bit less, and I just add up all these quantities until I get to 40. So I get, that's 100 plus 20 divided by 2 times 40. So that's the trapezoid here. Oops. Total variable cost. So that's the area below the supply curve. So again, so in the book, they say total cost, but here I write total variable cost. It's not a big deal. It's just, I think it's more precise. So it's this triangle over here. So it's 40 times 20 divided by 2. So that's so why do we have this? Well, of course, every unit that I produce costs me something. So when I add all these costs, I get this integral there. Consumer surplus is whatever they valued, they put as total value on what they bought, minus what they did have to pay. So it's the total willingness to pay minus the total transfer of payment from consumer to producers. Or it's also, well, you can just see it plainly here that it's this trapezoid minus this rectangle, because what was paid by the consumers was quantity of 40 times price of 20. So it's just this triangle above the price line and below the demand curve. Of course, most of the time, I don't really care about the total willingness to pay. I'm going to want you to tell me what's the surplus. I might ask you this, but yeah, mostly we care about surplus. We care about surplus, especially because we care about how did people gain by trading. So when we get into cost theorem, into bargaining for tradable permits, what we're going to care about is how the consumers, rather the polluter and the person who suffers from pollution bargain, or how one firm who's efficient at reducing pollution bargains with another who is not. So it's all about what you gain from the bargain. So this is the notion of surplus. Yeah. So and then obviously the producer surplus is this triangle there. So it's however much people paid them minus how much it costs. So the resulting triangle is this. So it's 20 times 40 divided by 2. Right. Yeah, so that's 400. And then the total surplus is just the producer surplus plus the consumer surplus. Yeah, so I'm willing to bet it's not too difficult for you. By the way, you can compute the total surplus in one go. You don't have to start by computing the consumer surplus, then the producer surplus. If I ask you the total surplus, because this is a triangle, so you can just say it's 100 multiplied by 20, which is 2,000 divided by 2, which is, yeah, 2,000 divided by 2, which is 1,000. I hope it's the, why, how do I get 2,000 there?
Because you have to add up, I think, all the way, no? So it's 40, the width is
40.
Yeah,
sorry, it's 40. Yes,
I thought 40 and not 20.
Yes. Yeah. So 4,000 divided by 2, so that's 2,000. All right. So here is consumer surplus, producer surplus. So yeah, I'm going to give, if you have problems with them, then so please do the exercises. That's going to help you. All right. So we see that the market equilibrium maximizes the social surplus. Why? Well, we can go back here. This is a bit what I was saying before. So imagine that I don't produce here, but I was to produce, say, here. So in that case, well, we can readily see that this consumer surplus and this producer surplus would be gone. This area would be a certain number of units that consumers would have been willing to pay for given the price, because they would have gotten a higher surplus for them. And this was a certain number of units, the same, that would have actually cost lower than the market price for the producers. And by the same token, if we produce too much, then we see that here the consumer surplus for these units is very low, but the market price, or rather than the marginal cost to produce them, is very high. So that's a waste. So this is wasteful. This is a unrealized surplus, and this is the optimal that markets can produce. Yeah, this does. I will remove that. Doesn't help it. So this is what I said there. Okay, so what? So this is all well and good, and are we at the nirvana of economic efficiency here? No, or rather, yes, in this case, but not necessarily all the time. So many things can go wrong with markets. So I'm happy that you are still in this class. So it means that you didn't finish your economic studies after just learning what Adam Smith was saying, because there was more than things. Right away, I shouldn't say that, because Adam Smith said a lot of things about the importance of government as well. So we're going to discuss them about more. Okay, so these are the main reasons why markets can go wrong. If somebody thinks of some other ones that I haven't included, go ahead and say it. But really, the main ones are these ones. So market power, we study this a lot. This is all what has to do with monopoly power or monopsony power. And in that case, it's an economic actor that does not take the market price as given. Is it bad? Well, yeah, it's kind of bad in the sense that here the producers would probably produce something like half of their, or maybe 2/3 of their production. They would hike the price, so that would definitely reduce the total surplus of the market. And for sure economists try to do something about this, but it's not what worries. Well, it's worrisome, because we would like markets to be competitive, but these can be much worse. Information asymmetry can literally make a market disappear. If people are unable to measure the quality of goods, and there's no mechanism that exists to provide this information or make up for it, then all markets can just not exist. So this, in my opinion, is sometimes the worst. Yes, Alex?
So for example, information asymmetry, obviously now we're talking about market failures. The way I think of it is a bit like the stock market in a way. Certain stocks, that drop drastically, not necessarily because of the earnings, but let's say like as information asymmetry, for example, there's some companies, for example, give bad maybe example, they won't explain properly their products, and some people just don't like it and stuff like that. Is that in a way, is that what you're trying to say? Or
oh yeah, so let me say it. Yeah, so stock markets are, in a sense, should be the place where most information is gathered together by all the market participants. But yeah, there's speculation going on there. So yeah, I'm going to give you an example. So this is monopolies. Monopsonies, oligopolies, all that jazz. Yeah, I'm going to give you my example of information asymmetry. If sellers have more information than buyers. So used car markets. Yeah, there's just doctors, mechanics. Does that take an H? Not sure. Yeah, takes an H. All right. So, and what's going on there? It's because, for instance, you bring your car to the mechanic and says, "Oh yeah, there's something weird with my tire. Could you please fix it?" And then when you come back, he says, "Oh, you're very lucky you brought your car there because it was about to break, and now we had to change 10 different pieces, and it's going to cost you $50,000 to fix it. So, or no, that's $5,000 to fix it. And so what should you do about that? You don't know anything, or a dentist. So last time I went to my dentist, so before I used to go to my dentist, and it cost maybe it didn't cost a lot, but last few times it's the same office, but they changed the dentist, and it's all the time it's like $800, $900. I'm like, why? And oh yeah, but we had to do this thing. But so is it like important because my teeth would have fallen off next year, or is it to reduce my risk from 0.1% to 0.09% when I'm 80 years old and I don't care? And so he knows it and I don't. So it creates so much problem for economic interactions. And another example is if buyers no more than sellers. So this insurance markets, health, many different things. So what's wrong with this? Well, people know how their behavior, they know their risk, they know the habits that they take in their lives to improve their health or not, but the insurer doesn't know. So what happens is, insurance markets are a mess, and the best way to deal with that is to actually not have private insurance markets, have just public insurance like you have in Canada. In the US, it's just the price for the I don't want to spend too long on this because it's not what this class is about, but yeah, these things are awful. Yeah, and they're difficult to regulate. So how did the 2007-8 economic crisis? Yeah, it's super complicated. So let me think about how it could have been the case. So you could say that, yeah, so the banks were trying to sell houses that were way too expensive for how much the buyers were able to afford. So, and they were willfully not asking them about anything. They were saying, oh, don't tell us your income, we don't care, we just give you the house and it's perfect. So I mean, there's it's a mess. I'm not going there. Anyway, so the two externalities, the two market failures we are going to deal with in this class is externalities and public goods. So externalities is any consequence on third party. From a connected activity. So I'm going to be much more precise about what I'm just saying. And here is goods that benefit several people. And that's so there's, if you let them, so if you let the market go, then the externalities are not addressed and people suffer, and the public goods are not produced at a sufficient quantity. So that's why generally the government has to levy taxes to make them. Yeah, so they're in bold. That's the two things that we're going to deal mostly in this class. Yeah, so here's the exact definition of externality. Well, one definition. So an externality is present as soon as the welfare of an economic agent or its utility or the profit if it's a firm is directly affected positively or negatively by the action of another agent in the economy. And important thing here is directly. I'm going to, oh yes, so that's exactly what I'm saying here. So by directly, we mean that an effect that doesn't happen through the price mechanism. So it's not, so what I could say is, imagine I'm a monopolist. So I charge very high prices for my goods. And then there's for some reason, there's a new firm that appears in the market, or the market was closed to trade and the government opens to trade. And then there are cheaper markets, goods on the market, and I lose my profit margin. Well, is that bad? No, that's actually an improvement. So in that case, that's a gain in the efficiency. That's because what was the problem is I had a rent as a, so for instance, as a monopolist, I had a monopolist rent. I was able to take my position and extract pure profit out of it. And now the market became more efficient. So here it's something that's direct in a sense that I say my neighbor plays loud music. So that's his decision, and he impacts me directly by the sound of the music. So it doesn't go through the price mechanism. So that's what we mean by externality. Yeah, so problem with negative externalities. So the producers do not pay the full production costs, or similarly, the consumers do not pay the full cost of their the thing that they do buy, because there's this external negative consequence. So this is especially negative externality. So in that, yeah, so this is an example in this class. So production of a good creates pollution that affects other people. That's the gist of it. So it's a very general and non-specific case. So for instance, farmers use fertilizers which drains in the rivers and create blue algal bloom. So if you don't legislate this, then they're just going to buy it and not care. So they don't take into account the full cost of their action when they do buy it. So essentially the price on the market is below the true price. So the true price is the private cost of fertilizer plus the external cost to lake residents, for instance. Yeah. So the quantity produced, consumed is above the socially optimal amount. Why? Because if there is an extra cost, so I'm going back to here, if the true cost is not here but is higher, then you can guess that yes, the market equilibrium would be with a higher price and a lower quantity.
So would that, at that point, would that create like an inflation in a way? Inflation, because if you're saying, for example, the quantity produced versus consumed is above the social optimal amount of the good. Mm-hmm. So if we take an example, if there's more consumption rather than than the quantity produced, then obviously people are willing to pay more, right, for it, which I guess will make like an inflation, or will raise that barrier, I presume, of the price.
So we don't need notions of price in this or money per se. So it's all, yeah, well, obviously there's price, but there's, so the inflation is like the slow rise in the nominal market price of everything. So here all we are saying is we should be producing more, we should be producing less for that special good. So it's one good, so it's not like all the goods. Yeah, and it's a static phenomenon in a way. It can happen over and over again. It doesn't mean that there's a change in price. It means just if you don't do anything, the market price is too low and the quantity is too high. We're not saying more. Yeah, so example, more water pollution. So a factory is located close to a river and discharges waste due to its production process. The negative effects is the lower quality of the water. So it see the reduction in the number of fishes and the fact that the water cannot be used to drink. So if the factory does not take those effects into account, then it overproduces and it discharges. And here, note that I'm writing discharges too much. Oops. Too much, because we're going to have a discussion about this. So how much waste is okay waste and how much is too much? Yeah, so if there is no incentive to reduce this, so there's a market failure. All right, so before going further, I want to ask you if you can think of how this would apply to another thing. So traffic congestion. So I'm telling you, traffic congestion is a negative externality, even if you consider that cars didn't pollute at all. So just traffic congestion is a negative externality. Now, can somebody explain to me why? Yes, so externalities are unforeseen costs, or they can be foreseen. It's just that it's foreseen, but I don't care. So it's I play my saxophone and I know my neighbor doesn't like it, but I don't care. So that's the negative impact I'm having in my neighbor's life. So because it takes time that would otherwise be spent elsewhere, somewhere else, it's, yeah, but so you need more detail in that. So for whom, who decides? No idea. No, nobody has an idea. Yeah, more money spent on gas, noise, pollution. No, specific congestion, if you think purely about, yeah, so the time is okay. It's the time is the problem. Yeah, so if you're stuck in traffic, it takes time. But how is this an externality? Going back to my definition, so we don't pay the full cost so of our economic decision. So here the decision is, should I take my car or not? Oh, yeah, I have it here. Okay, back. So I'm going to tell you the answer, but it's not all that obvious. So the answer is because when I take my car, I'm thinking, should I take my car, or should I take the metro, or should I go later or earlier? All of these decisions are decisions that I take for myself, because I'm asking how longer is it if I take the metro, or do I dislike the metro very much, or yeah, other things. But I am not thinking about the fact that my car on the road at that moment is making everybody else taking more time in their car in traffic as well. So the notion of externality is that an economic actor does not consider it the impact of it, his or her decision on the lives of other people. And here I have a small illustration of this. So commuters use their car until they personally don't save any more time, but they don't take into account the fact that it affects other people. So I'm going to show it here. So this is the number of cars on the road. So imagine it's a very, very small example, but the same would apply at a larger scale. And here I have average time it takes for everybody that takes their car. So here, one person on the road takes 10 minutes, or 10 minutes, 2 10 minutes, 3 10 minutes, then 4 people, then it takes on average 11 minutes for everybody. Then 5, 12, 6, 14, 7, 18, 8, 24 minutes. So how, and so the question is, so here in this very simple example, then you can, oh yeah, so the simple example is I give you only care about time, and the travel time by train takes 18 minutes. What is everybody going to do personally? Well, the first person is going to go, no problem, second, third, fourth, and then they will go until it takes too long. So there will be how many people in the street? 7, because with 7 people in the street, it takes exactly 18 minutes to travel by car, and it takes exactly 18 minutes to travel by train. So, or they could be indifferent between taking the car, taking the train here. So, but yeah, so below this, they're going to take their car for sure, and above they're going to not. So this is it's not going to happen. But now, what's the optimal number of cars on the road? Well, what you should seek to maximize is the time saved. So the time saved is what it's. So if I build a road, so what I'm seeking is to save as much time for as many people as possible. How much time do everybody that takes their car save? It's 18 minutes minus the average time for the car, and you multiply this by the number of cars on the road. So here the average time saved is 8, because there's one person. The total time saved is 18 minus 10 times 1, so that's 8. Here this is 16, 24, but then you see that it starts going down. It increases still, but less fast. And here it starts going down. Why? Because from here to here, then you have another person that takes their car, so it's better for them. But the time saved for everybody now drops from, this was 18 minus 12, so that's 6 minutes. And then it drops to 18 minus 14, so 4 minutes. So the sweet spot is 30 people on the road. And at the market equilibrium, so how many cars on the road? 7 cars. And how many minutes saved? 0. So it means that there is absolutely no positive impact of having built this extra road, because people are going to use the road as long as they can save 1 second until the time that they don't save anything. So that's what economists think of the Quebec third link in general. So they don't think that it's going to reduce CO2 emissions, because it's just going to make more people want to take their car until the third link is completely jammed anyways, and you didn't save anything. So yeah, that's a at first guess of what is going to happen. Now maybe you add some extra links for buses or fast lanes, or I don't know what, probably, but yeah, that's the phenomenon that and then you add on top of that, of course, air pollution and all of this, the rest. Yeah, so that's an example of but so are externalities always negative? No. So there's the classic example of positive externality. So I didn't put it. Yeah. So if you have a positive externality, that's the reverse. Is that the fact that the transaction or the economic decision happens has positive impacts for other people, but privately they don't really care about it all that much. So they don't produce enough in that case. So production affects positively other people, and the quantity produced is below the social optimum. So I have, yeah. So classic example is beekeeper. Why? Well, if I keep bees, then I care about the honey I can produce and the profit I can make with that. But I don't think maybe that my bees help pollinate the fields of my neighbors. So does it take 2 L's or 1 L? Oh yeah, 2 L. All right. So that's one example, just for flower gardens or fixing your house. So everybody enjoys the beauty of flowers, or maybe you're in a sad mood and you don't agree, but that's your loss. So most people enjoy flowers. Education, more. So that's a tricky thing. It's if we were in a public economics class, I would have let you think about it. But yeah, so educated people are, so they go, so you guys go to get an education, and you think, oh, it's good because I'm going to have a good career and do what I like. But what you don't necessarily think is, I'm going to get a career and I'm going to be able to, so part of what I earn as a worker is going to be paid to the government. And the more I earn, the more taxes I pay. And these taxes help everybody. So in that sense, education has positive externality. Another reason is also, yeah. So what do I mean by this? Well, before you would say, oh, I'm better have lots of kids so that they take care of me when I grow old. Well, now we have pensions, but if you don't have kids going around when you're old, you may have 1 million in your pension. Who cares if nobody produces goods? Then the value of this money. So in that case, it really is inflation. So you just have lots of money, but that's nominal. If you don't have anything that you can buy, then it doesn't serve. So yeah, education again. So educated people are productive, and having lots of educated people, so having kids, for instance, is good. Vaccination. So that this is a very, very important topic for right now. So of course, if you vaccinate yourself, it's good for yourself, but it's also good for your neighbor because they're not going to get vaccinated. If you don't get the disease, you are not going to give it to other people. So same with masks. If protect and yeah, so that's pretty obvious. So when they say it's my freedom, yeah, it's your freedom ends when the consequences on the others appear. So that's the problem. Is we live in a society, so we have to take that into account in our decisions. All right. So this is a bit what I was saying about what's not an internet externality. So anything that has to do with impact on the price system. So if the firm enters the market and the monopoly loses market shares, this is better. It loses a rent. So if local producers lose market share when they open to global trade, again, so that's generally we say that trade is good. So that's an improvement, not a bad thing, because it lowers the price. A new technology replaces an old one. Workers lose their job, yes, but so that's totally sad for these people. But again, this is the normal. So it's not an externality. It's something that goes on normally. There are all losses of economic rent. Okay, so here we're going to go more closely into modeling all of this. Okay, so this is a vocabulary that's going to be useful. So we're going to say that private costs are costs related to labor, raw material, machinery, energy. So these are things that a firm takes into account in the private market. So they affect directly a firm's profit and are considered in production decisions. Then external costs are the externalities. So there are indirect consequences of production that affects the society, but not the firm. So they do not show up in the firm's profit and loss statement. So they're not considered in the production decisions. So this is why we have to somehow make them make sure that they take it into consideration. Yeah. So again, I said that there would be a lot of letters of acronyms. Well, here you go. Yeah, so to produce efficiently, you need to take both type of costs into account. So the private cost production plus whatever the external cost arise from, in our case, adverse environmental impacts. So we're going to define the social cost as the private cost plus the external environmental cost. So we're going to name this SC for social cost, which is going to be equal to PC private cost plus EC external cost. All right. Yeah, so marginal social cost is the marginal private cost plus the marginal external cost. So you just put M's in front of all of these, because of course we care about costs. So normally we would have had marginal cost here and that's it. But here is just that we need to differentiate between what's private and what's not private or what's external. So yeah, marginal social cost is equal to marginal private cost plus marginal external cost. Okay, and this is what it looks like. So here I've added yeah, constant external cost. So why do I mean constant external cost? Simply because it's always the same additional cost. So if here the marginal private cost was 0, well, the total cost, the social cost is 0 plus this amount. And you look at the curves and they're parallel. But it's entirely possible that I could have had social cost that would have looked like this, for instance. So in that case, you have increasing marginal cost and an increasing external cost. So you get this this line for the marginal social cost. All right. Yeah, and as I said, this is so if you care about economic efficiency, then you don't care about just the marginal private cost. You care about the marginal social cost, the total cost. So I'm not saying how we get there, but I'm saying that if I was somehow a private plan or omniscient planner, that I could decide everything that goes on in the economy, then what would I choose? I would choose a point such that the marginal social cost intersects the demand curve. So as you see the oh yeah, and then so as I said, I'm going to say that if it's a private equilibrium, it would be Q with a star and P with a star. And here I'm going to denote the socially efficient equilibrium, QSPS, all right? So I don't remember if it's the same for the book, but yeah, that's my class notes. So I'm the one who decides what the notation is. And of course, at the exam, I'm going to mostly use the same notation. Here, I note that I have said that the demand curve implies that the marginal private benefit equal the marginal social benefit. Why? Because I haven't introduced this notion there, but you can pretty much imagine that if you have some positive externality, then what happens is that your marginal social benefit is higher than the marginal private benefit of the consumers there. So in that case, it would be the consumers who don't imagine that buying it benefits some other person, for instance. So the social benefit would be higher than the private benefit. But yeah, we're not there yet. So questions about this? Or it's very clear? Yeah, so this, I'm pretty sure I'm going to give you some exercise with linear curves.
Sure, what does DWL stand for already?
Oh yeah, sorry, yeah, that's a good question. So DWL is dead whitelist. In prior, if because if I produce here, so if imagine that I only care about, yes, exactly. So how you understand this? So I let the market choose whatever they produce. So they produce too much. They produce at Q star. What's the problem with Q star? Well, it looks like it's efficient because the demand is equal to the supply, but it's not equal to the marginal social cost, which is right there. So there's this there's this efficiency from inefficiency from overproduction. And so if you want to add up all the inefficiency from the overproduction, well, you start at the social optimum, which is QS and PS, and then so what you realize is for any quantity that's larger than QS, then the marginal private benefit is the demand. It's in blue, is lower than the marginal social cost in red. So if you add all of these difference there, so you get this triangle, which is the deadweight loss. All right. So Q star greater than QS. And social cost is greater than demand. Yeah, for all these things. So if I had to, yeah, no, I think it's clear like this. I don't want to add too many details. So this is for again for this type of external cost, but you could have other types of external costs that would create a different shape of the externality, but the idea is always the same. It's the area below the, yeah, I could say that. Area below the marginal social cost above the marginal social benefit, which I'm going to define later. And yeah, so it depends. So it depends if it's if there's overproduction or underproduction. If there is underproduction, then the externality would be this way here. But this is really the, yeah, I should say about the demand. Yeah, because there are many cases, so I'm just I just want you to have a intuitive understanding of what's going on. Okay, so just to summarize what's happening. So the output of the good is too large, too much pollution is produced. So the costs are external, so no incentive. Oh yeah, so by the way, something else that I wanted to say. So look at this. Here, this is the optimal quantity, and this is the optimal price on the market. So how much pollution? Yeah, no, it's a difficult question to ask, but yeah. Okay, let me it is there. So let's use, let's see, yellow. So what's this? Yeah, it's it's too hard to see. What is this region there? Somebody knows? What's this blue region? So imagine that the externality is pollution. Yes, it's the oh, so the important thing is that there's QS here. So what is this? This is the extra cost from the externalities, so from the pollution. Extra cost from the pollution, extra cost from the pollution, all the way up to here QS. So what does that mean? It means that the total cost from the pollution, the total damage caused by the pollution is this region there. And then the important thing is at the efficient production level, QS. So what am I subtly telling you here? What am I telling you under the radar?
Now this is going to be on the exam probably.
Yeah, but I'm going to talk about it many times, but I want you to realize right away something important. That polluting is bad. No, that's exactly the opposite. So, what I'm saying is it just looks like if you have an efficient situation, that efficient situation can happen with some level of pollution. That even in so the efficient outcome is probably not to produce zero amount of pollution. What would you get if you said, oh, we want zero pollution? Well, you would get a product. If you start producing and you have some external costs from pollution, it means the only way to have zero pollution is to produce zero. But why is that bad, or why is that not efficient? Well, because the marginal benefit of starting to produce is very, very high, and it still is higher than the marginal cost plus the pollution. So it looks, if you ask maybe some person who really cares about the environment, they would say it's sacrilegious to imagine that anything above zero level of pollution is acceptable. But so at least in economics, we don't say that. We say that what we care about is having an efficient level that's not too high and not too low. And or another way of saying it is if we try to reduce or eliminate all pollutions from everywhere, then the cost of doing that would be astronomical. It would be extremely, extremely tough for human beings. We're not saying that going as we're going now is fine. We're definitely saying that we're having too much pollution now, but that the optimal level is not necessarily zero. So. This is but so if you're economists, and for you it might not be surprising, but so usually you have this class, you can have people from different departments, and yeah, economists sometimes look heartless because we just compute stuff and we don't care about costs and stuff like that. Yeah, so that's why we're saying that if the negative externality consequences is too much pollution, not that zero level of that above zero pollution, pollution is produced. It's just that too much pollution is produced. Yeah, so if costs are external, then there's no incentive to decrease pollution per unit. So release the pollution in nature is cheaper. So the marginal social cost is always above the marginal private cost. So MSC is above MPC. And MPC does not reflect the true or full production cost because there is this external cost to take into account as well. So yeah, it's all saying the same thing. So if the external costs are not added, the price of the good in the market is below the correct price. So here, consumers should be paying PS because at this price, this reflects not only how much it costs the firm to produce it, but also the negative damage caused by somebody else. So that is the true market cost or the social cost, if you will, the social price, if you want. But if the market price is P star, then it means that the good is too cheap. So same exact situation can happen for positive externality. Oh, by the way, so how long do we go? We go to, are we over time now or? Yeah, let me check my schedule. I always forget. Oh yeah, we're over time. Okay, so we stop here and we finish this next time, which is still online. So we just go back in person next week. So unless there are any questions before we go? No? Okay, so have a nice day, everybody.